Monument Valley Forgotten Shores is a DLC that presents itself after the completion of the game's original content and gives us 8 more magical chapters. But, unlike the DLC Ida's Dream, this one isn't free, so your boy unfortunately has to spend some bread. The chapter, well in this case appendix, starts in the chasm. This fresh environment gives us this inside the volcano vibes, which let's be honest, it probably is. What's strange about this travel is that as we make our way down, numerous exit points are shown, but we are never meant to go through them. So what's the point in them being in there? Is it for suspense? Maybe. Since there's parts where the ground literally collapses on us. Is it mystery? To this day I still don't know. As the lowest level of the stage presented itself, our good old totem friend Josh awaits us, and for some reason, instead of going through the exit entryway, we then instead went high up above the stratosphere. And again. And again. Until we've reached the far heavens to present our good old geometry piece, which concludes the first chapter. After doing so, we're then brought to the level selection stage, which has a completely different aesthetic to that of the original chapters. The second appendix, named the Serpent Lake, gives us this swampy aesthetic, and as we change the playing field, this beautiful water reflects perfectly on the surface of the structure. We then enter the summit of the structure, and like a flower, its summit blooms and sends us further above this floating island thing. What's interesting is that, after completing the stage of the game, we are then brought back down to a different lake, sort of. One of the more interesting things occur here. As we trigger the mechanism, the pillars of the stage start rotating, giving us more aesthetic and challenge to take. What I like about this stage is how the ending sequence works. Instead of the usual scenery, we end the stage on the reflection of the structure we've just finished. The third chapter of the series caught my eye right from the get-go. The thief. What could that possibly mean? Oh, wait, what? Where's my hat? Well, the next phase of the journey was me figuring out a way to get this stinker off my hat alongside this upbeat background music, giving me these factory vibes. As I reached the end phase, I wasn't able to finish it, since I don't have my wizard's hat. But luckily, the biggest Dyson fan happened to help me out. Well then, let's go back to finishing the stage. Fourth appendix Halcyon Court, which I've literally butchered, is a fancy old western type faucet level. It gave me this Greek era aesthetic. What's interesting about this spot is that for the first time, well at least to my knowledge, that water is implemented in the level, where we actually use it and not just as a background element. It's also a surprise since it's been a while since we've seen Mommy, so there's that. Let's see what she has to say. The last bit of the stage gave Water Wheel a whole new meaning, as we need to connect the pathway in order to get the mechanism continuously flowing, allowing us to proceed further and finish the track. The fifth appendix, The Lost Falls. This game really shows a great job at giving me scenery that's very mystical, wherein you just wanna have an adventure about and appreciate its scenery and how well thought out these illusions are. The goal of this specific journey, however, is to ascend the falls, I think, along with Josh. This is also the first part where we've used Josh as a blockage to progress, which I thought at the time was really weird. It was until later on that this foreshadowing will come to fruition. As we enter the landscape within the wet walls, the wet damp edge cliff thing aesthetic revealed itself, and that's when the foreshadowing of the smashing happened. Our Josh was no more, well, at least for now, as we finish our journey in the edge of the falls. Chapter 6, The Citadel of Deceit. This stage name really doesn't quite feel right with me, aside from the Deceit part, since this is the first part of the DLC that my brain actually went mad. My perspective looking at this was wobbly. I tried to just guess where things are based on the exit ways. Luckily, this wasn't all that long, just very confusing and gave us this very satisfying sequence. The seventh stage, The Oubliette, to me was the box from the original series. This was a very delightful experience, as each face of the figure was a different world, and all the parts are interconnected. As well as this wonderful delight at the end. as we finish the 7th chapter, a final piece to the puzzle unfolded right in front of our eyes. The 8th chapter, Nocturne, where we finally find Josh, well in this case, Joshlets. We traverse the chill and very cool landscape looking for Joshlets, with the goal of getting them into the 4 corners located on the top portion of the stage. Which will then reveal this Avatar Node Pole, Air Temple vibes area. Where Joshlets finally get back to big ol' Josh. And the 10th stage from the original series Observatory was shown in the background. So what do you think about the game? Personally, it's one of my favorites. I will be making similar content but different one for the time being. If you've enjoyed what you've watched, consider supporting the channel by subbing and leaving a like, as we're trying to hit 1,000 subs before the end of 2022. Paalam!